Hello everybody, if you're new to the channel and you are new to Blender, I'm hoping that this video might help you out because I'm going to be creating a very simple model. We're going to be making a window, and along the way we're going to talk about the interface of Blender to some extent and some of the common keystrokes that you might want to use and some of the various tools. Now, I'm in an older version of Blender and a couple of things will be different, but I'm pretty sure that you can still figure things out that I'm going to do. It's going to be relatively straightforward. So when you start up Blender, it looks a little intimidating, and to be honest, the first time I started up, which was many years ago, I shut it down right away. I didn't know what to do. But over the years, the interface has improved, and I've gotten more used to it. And this is what you will generally see when you start up Blender. All right, so we've got a camera, so I can click it, and you can see that it's turned orange in this case, and it's selected. I've got a cube, and I've got a light. And all of those things are also illustrated over here in the hierarchy. So there's my light, there's my cube, there's my camera. I can select them that way. And generally, when I model things, I would tend to delete this stuff and start from a blank scene. So you can select everything by pressing A, and if you hit A twice, you deselect everything. So I'm going to select everything by pressing A, and you can see my screencast keys are down here. Whenever I click a key, you can see what I'm pressing. So with everything selected, I'm going to press X, and that'll bring up this little dialog box, and I'm going to click delete, so there's nothing there. Now right now, I can use the middle mouse button to just pan around like this, or spin around. Or I can press the number keys that are usually on the side of my keyboard. On the right hand side, I can press 1. And if you look up here, you see I said press numpad 1, it says front orthographic. And orthographic means that you're looking straight on as opposed to sort of looking like down like that. It now says user perspective. So 1 is the orthographic view. And you're often going to want to use those views when you scale something, like make it bigger or smaller, rotate it, stuff like that. So we'll see where that is necessary. But you could press 1 for front view, 3 is a side view. Now I realize there's nothing in here for you to look at, but this says right orthographic. And if you wanted to look from the left, you would do Control 3. See, it says left orthographic. Or 1 for front, you want to look from the back, Control 1. 7 is top view, so you'd be looking straight down on your model. Control 7 is the bottom. All right, and you'll just get used to having those things memorized. So I'm going to press 1, and I want to create the window frame and then the glass that goes in it. It's going to be very simple to do that. So when you come to model something, you need to usually have references or a good idea in your mind, or maybe you can look right over. For example, I have windows right there. And you got to think to yourself, well, what shape am I going to use to start with to create this? Is it circular? Is it cylindrical? Is it rectangular? And a window is pretty much rectangular. And there are multiple ways of doing things in Blender. I'm going to show you a way where we create all the individual pieces, like the pieces of wood. So we're going to start with separate pieces and sort of put them together to make the frame. This is often the way I like to do things. So let's start by creating the top and the bottom part of the frame. So I'm going to need a rectangle. Now you can start with the cube, but I'm actually going to start with a plane. I often will do that. And to bring in your object, I'm going to press Shift A. That's the shortcut key. So you can see it down there in green on the left. Shift A brings up this add menu, and I'm going to scroll or just move my mouse up to where it says mesh, over to plane, and I'm going to left click. And that has brought in a plane. You can see that orange line there. It's actually laying down flat, so this is facing upwards. All right, press 1 again. Now, I want to have the gizmo with the arrow keys to move this. So I'm going to come up here. So it says Show Gizmo. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to just click on the move. That's the one that I want. All right, so I can now move this plane up and down. Control Z undoes that. Now, it's not much use to me laying flat on its back. I'm going to rotate it so it faces towards us. And we are again in front orthographic view. So I'm going to rotate around this red axis. This is the X axis. This is the Z axis. And if I just move, This is the y-axis. So if we were looking down from the top, this would be like a graph. And by the way, to do this, I'm holding down the shift and the middle mouse button, moving it like that. This is like the graph you would see in math class in high school. This is the x-axis and the y-axis. All right, but if we're looking in the front, this is the x and this is the z axis there. It's not critical that that makes any sense to you right now. Anyhow, we're going to rotate this around the x. So I'm going to, the command to do that is Rx and then how many degrees. R for rotate, X for the axis you want to rotate around, and how many degrees. Well, 90 degrees to stand it up. So I'm going to press Rx 90. And now it's facing, and I just click to get out of that. Now if I press Alt A, it's now deselected. I can select it, deselect it. So now the plane is facing us in front orthographic view. If I press 3, it sort of disappears because it's so thin. It's there. We're looking from the side. Press 1 again. I'm going to select this. Now we are in what's called object mode, where we're sort of at the outermost limit of the model, of the object. We want to go into the model to manipulate it, to scale it, to rotate it, usually. Now you can scale and rotate in object mode, or I'm going to press the tab button now. Tab. You see I press the tab button. I'm now in edit mode here, and it says that up here. You can also change here, edit mode, object. I'm on object mode. I like to work in edit mode, and when I make a change, that change will not affect some of the base parameters of this, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit later on. So I would suggest doing most of your edits in edit mode. And in edit mode, we can choose vertex mode, all right? In which case, in this case, the vertices, there are 4 vertices, 4 dots that make up this polygon. This is a quad for 4, because there are 4 vertices. We can also switch to edge mode, in which case all the edges are selected, and I could just select one if I want by clicking on it, and the other ones are deselected, or another, or I can hold shift, and now I've got 2 selected, keep holding shift, 3, 4, or of course you could just press A to select the whole thing. So I'm in edge mode, and this one here is face selection mode. So if I deselect and select that, I select the whole face. And you'll get to know why you should use each, mostly by watching tutorials and see what people do, and you'll get the hang of it. For what we're going to do, it doesn't matter really which mode we're in. I'm going to leave it on face selection. But by the way, in order to switch between these, you don't have to always come up here. You can press 1, that switches it to vertex selection. 2 switches it to edge selection. It's not doing it for some reason. 3 switches it to face selection. Let's go back to 2. There, edge, 1, vertex. So I'll just press 3 for face selection. All right, now what I want to do is I want to create the frame of this window, and to do that I need to make this plane thinner. All right, I want to squeeze it down like this, and then I want to give it some depth. All right, so I'm not using numbers or anything. I'm just using the default plane, and I'm going to scale this in the Z direction, up and down. So to do that, we're going to press SZ and then move our mouse inwards like this. S, Z, only in the Z axis, and then move my mouse in, and you can see it's shrinking down. Now you just use your judgment as to how thin you think this should be. Maybe I'll do it like that. And then because this is a window and this is kind of like the middle point, I'm going to pull this up. I'm just pulling on the Z arrow. Instead of doing that, you can also use the command G for grab or go, and Z, and then just move your mouse up. And a lot of people don't even turn on this gizmo. So for example, if I turn this off, I'll just go back to 0. I could just go GZ and do this. Or I could, if I want to move it left to right, GX. Okay? So I'm going to GZ, and I'm going to move this up a ways. I don't know exactly how high. I'm just going to go, maybe I'll go a little bit higher to there. All right, I'm going to turn this back on because I tend to use that. So I've got the beginning of my window frame. It doesn't have any thickness yet. We'll do that. That may not be the width I'm going to use. I may want to scale this after in the X. I may want to go SX and then pull out or in to get the size that I want. So I'll just do that for now. All right, we're going to give this some thickness. I'm holding the middle mouse button and scrolling around so that it looks like a piece of wood. So we're going to use the extrude function, I guess. And I want to extrude it along this green arrow. This is the y-axis, and you can see it labeled over here. Y is green, X is red, Z is blue. So I want to give it some thickness. So what we're going to do is to extrude, we're going to press E and left click. That locks it in, and then pull in the green direction. And you can see I'm extruding. Now, of course, this is a piece of wood from a window frame, so maybe I'm going to come out that far. Now, if I go back, I could press E and then just gesture in the axis I want. And, you know, I could pull it out that way. I'll often do that. But if you find it's not going where you want it, just use the arrows. So we've now given this some thickness, and it's more like a rectangle. All right. It's made, I'm going to press Alt-A to deselect everything. I'm in face selection, so I can select a face. I can click and select another face. If I want two faces selected, hold down Shift and Shift and Shift. There are other ways to select multiple faces. If for some reason I needed to select all these outer faces, I could come over here and I can Shift and Alt and click. Let's do that again. Shift, Alt, and click on this line between these two faces. Shift and Alt and click. And it actually selects all of the faces all around. Just practice that and get familiar with that. We'll be using that quite a bit. And if you watch my other videos, you'll see that. So press 1, and you can see that we have, I'm still in edit mode, by the way. If I go Tab, I can go back into object mode and Alt-A to deselect. So we've got our top piece of wood, let's say, and it might be still too thick, I'm not sure. Now, one thing I like to do to make it a little bit more visible is to come over here up to the top where it says shading, click there and turn on the cavity shader here and watch what happens when I do that. Now we see these white lines. It just makes it a little bit nicer, like light is reflecting off this, makes it a bit easier to see. At this point, however, this piece of wood, we're calling it a piece of wood, is very sharp. You know, this comes up and then right out in a 90-degree angle. And in reality, nothing is that sharp. And so what we want to do is soften that up a bit, give it a little bit of curvature. And a good way to do that is using the bevel modifier. Now, in my version of Blender, I have the wrench here. And if I just click on modifier, they're all like this. In the newer versions of Blender, there are menus, but what you're going to search for is the bevel modifier. So I've clicked on the wrench. I'm going to click on add modifier, search for bevel, and then click it. Now that's quite a large bevel, and what it's really doing is it's adding line segments in there with a certain distance apart to create that effect. Now that might be cool for like some kind of a spaceship, but that's not what we want for a piece of wood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually increase the number of segments. I'm going to go to 2, and that'll tighten it up a bit. It's now sort of almost a rounded rectangle, but I'm going to change the amount. It's 0.1 meters. I'm going to make this a smaller amount. I'm going to try 0.01 or 2. I'll go 2. All right, it was 0.1, now 0.02, enter. And now you can see that we have our original lines here, just this middle one here. That was our original rectangle. And it's added 2 more to sort of round it. Now that might even be too big. What if I change this to 0.01? Just watch the lines. They get tighter. And if you zoom out, that kind of looks a little bit nicer. All right. I'm going to leave it like that for now. You don't have to. You can click this arrow, by the way, to close that up. You don't have to come over here and apply this at this point. You can just leave the modifier active, that bevel. All right, press 1. We have one piece of wood. I want to do the bottom piece of wood. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to duplicate this piece. So I'm going to press Shift D. I'm in object mode right now. I could do it in edit mode, doesn't matter. And it's right on top of the other one. I'm going to pull it down in the Z. Now you can see I've got two of them. I'm back to front view. I'm going to pull this down and sort of imagine the size of my window, maybe like that. But I want this bottom piece to be larger. Often in the windows you have the window frame like this and then a bottom larger piece with a handle to move the window up and down. So I want to make this larger. I really prefer to do the scaling, as you know, in edit mode. And a good reason for that is if you look at my gizmo, my move tool, okay, I can move this. It's not right on top of the object. But if I go into edit mode by pressing tab and select everything, it jumps right to the actual object. Now I want this to be longer in the Z, so I'm just going to press SZ and just make it like almost like twice as thick. All right, at least, or twice as high. I'm keeping the same depth of the wood or thickness of the wood. All right, so we have the top and the bottom. Now it's not centered exactly around this. The bottom piece is a little bit higher up and the top piece a little, higher. I said that wrong. The bottom piece is closer to this and the top piece is further away. That really doesn't matter at this point. So we have the top and the bottom. And by the way, notice that the bottom piece here has the bevel modifier. It's beveled. And that's because we copied it from this one. And when you copy an object or duplicate it, the object that you create, the copy, inherits whatever modifiers are there. And of course I could turn this off, or I can shut it down just for the moment by clicking on what looks like this little TV monitor. Click it and it goes away. Sometimes it's nice to work like that, but I'm going to put it back on. It's not really a problem. Now, I think those may be too far apart, but we're going to see. We're going to do the vertical pieces now, and I'm going to use this piece and duplicate it, and then I'm going to rotate one on the left and one on the right, and then we're going to get the actual size of our window and see what we want to do. So I can do this in object mode or in edit mode. Let's try it in edit mode because there's something I want to show you. With this one selected, I'm going to tab into edit mode, A to select it because I can't do anything unless it's selected, and I want to duplicate this, and then I want to rotate it around so it's straight up and down. So now you have to think, well, what axis am I rotating around? Okay, now the y-axis is pointing backwards, so let's go to the front again. Imagine the y-axis is pointing backwards. If we rotate around the y-axis, it goes vertical. If I rotate around the x, it just spins around. And if I rotate around the z, it'll go around like this. But I want to rotate it up and down. So, Shift D to duplicate, click. It's there, all right? And then I want to rotate around the Y 90 degrees. So I'm going to press R, Y 90. And now it's straight up and down. It's not in the right position, but that's, you made a nice cross, whatever. But it's also part of this object, all right? Because I duplicated it in edit mode, and I'd like to separate it out and have it as its own object, just like this one is a separate object from this. If I select this, you see the way it selects the whole cross? So I'm going to come back into edit mode. And I'm going to press Alt-A for now. That's none of it's selected. What if I want this piece separated out, but it's not selected? I can click on a piece of it in either face mode, edge mode, or vertex mode. If I press Control-L, it will select everything linked to what I had selected. So if I select the top, Control-L, it will just select the parts of your model that are connected together. It doesn't select this. So now I can move this piece. I can press G and I can move it. And really what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to position it kind of around here. It still has a bevel on, just like the other one, but it's part of this object. If I go out, see, it's still part of it. So I'm going to go back into edit mode, and I'd like this to be an individual object because I'm going to mirror this to the other side in a moment, and I don't want to mirror this piece as well. So to separate it, with it all selected, press P, separate by selection. Now you probably forget some of these things, but over time you'll just learn. Separate by selection, I'm going to choose that one. Go back into object mode and deselect. And now I have this object, this object, this one. This one is a separate object. All right, now, if I want to move this a bit, I can zoom in close, go into edit mode, A to select it, press G, and just position it like that. And I like it not joined because it looks kind of like a piece of wood, like pieces of wood are nailed down and glued together. You can do it as close as you want, but it doesn't touch the bottom one. And so let's fix that. Let's go into edit mode. I'll deselect. And I want to select the bottom and pull it down. Now you can do this in any of these modes, but I'll stay in face selection. And in order to select this bottom face, I can either just click it. That's probably the easiest way. So let's do that. And then let's pull it down in the Z direction until it just kind of touches and there's a little tiny gap. It makes it look like separate pieces of wood. So there, we have the top, the bottom, and the left side. I would like that equally on the right side. And my 3D cursor, that's this red and white circle, is right in the middle. And so I can use the mirror modifier to create a mirror image of this on the other side, exactly equal on the other side. So I'm going to come over to my modifiers. I happen to be on there. If I was on somewhere else, I would just click the wrench, choose Add Modifier, and then again, in a newer version of Blender, you'll have to look around, search for the mirror modifier. Click that, and it defaults to the x-axis. You can see this red axis. We're mirroring along the x-axis from the left to the right. But you might have chosen instead of the x, let's say there's nothing selected, I don't get anything, the y-axis, well then it's mirroring in a different way. You just choose the one that works for you, and we have that on the other side. All right. Now, at this point, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be leaving those in that position, so I can apply the mirror modifier. Just do that. Just click the arrow and apply, or you can come over and go control with it selected, Control A. That will select. That will apply the mirror modifier. So we're doing really good, but we now need those pieces in the middle. I think what I'm going to do is use a piece of this to make the piece that goes across and up and down. I like to do this quite often. So I'm going to come into this piece and go into edit mode by pressing tab, and I'm still in face selection. I'm going to select maybe this one, the front one, why not? So press 1 to look in front orthographic view, and let's press Shift D to duplicate and pull it down. Now, because this is off center, I can't tell the exact center, but I can kind of estimate it, and then I can always change it as well. So I'm going to want a piece roughly there, not that size, but let's separate it from this piece here. It's still part of that. If I select it all, I get everything. Just this piece right here, select that. So let's press P, separate by selection again. Now, go back into object mode. Now that is its own object. Still got the bevel modifier. You don't really see anything yet because this is just one polygon thick. But let's go ahead and give this some thickness in order to get it placed in there. So I'm going to go into edit mode, A to select it all. What I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to extrude it, but not too thick like this. I'm going to press E, and then I'm just going to gesture in the Y direction, or you can pull on the arrow. E, I'm going to pull, and just look at it. You see the bevel starting to form. Maybe something like that for those cross pieces. Okay, but it's too long. So select it all, and let's scale it in the X, smaller. S, X, pull. And if you want to move a bit slower, hold Shift, and then you can move in slower increments as opposed to not holding Shift, and then it moves like that. And that's fine. We can always click, and then if you need to scale it again, just go SX again. Whoops. SX, like that. Of course, we can SZ if we want it a little thinner, and I think I do. There we go. So we have that piece. But I'm probably going to move it back in the frame a little bit. I don't want it right flush with the front. So I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to pull with the Y maybe around the middle or something. So you get a little bit of it showing through. It looks a little nicer. All right, now we need to do the vertical part. So let's just duplicate this piece. Let's take this. Let's do it in object mode. Shift D, rotate around the Y 90 degrees. RY 90. And there it is. Now that didn't work very well because of where my origin is. So I'm going to X delete that. Let's go back into this by pressing Tab. A to select it all. Now my gizmo is right on this object, so I can go Shift D, rotate Y 90, and it's central. But again, it's part of this object, and I'd rather have it on its own, so I'm going to select a piece and Control L to select what's linked, and I'm going to separate it. P, separate by selection. So you'll end up doing a lot of these things again and again, and it becomes second nature. Now, one thing I'd like to do is not have it flush with the surface here. I'd like to push this back a little bit, like that. I think that looks a little bit more interesting. And now we have to make it longer. So I'm going to go into edit mode again, and I'm going to scale this in the Z, but I'm going to hold Shift. So I can move slowly until it just sort of contacts, and I can zoom in my scroll wheel, SZ again, pull till we have touchdown. And it looks like that. I'm just now scrolling around to make sure that this piece is making contact with this and it's not too far back like back there, which doesn't make sense. Control Z. So we have those. Hopefully they're relatively central. Now what a lot of people will do is they will delete faces that won't be seen by the camera. So if you were making a house or something and you had your window here against the wall, you're not going to see the back of this frame. And if I come over here to the overlays and I click here and I scroll down to statistics, you can see how many faces, edges, vertices, triangles this is made up of. And the idea is you generally want to have the lowest amount of vertices or faces that you can. And so if you're not going to see the faces, you might as well delete them. And the other reason is if and when you get to texturing things and you have to use UV maps, any extra faces take up space on the UV map. That means your texture resolution may not be as good as you'd like it. So it's a good practice to get rid of extra faces. So I'll show you what I think we don't need. For now, anyhow, go into edit mode, press 3 for face selection while we're already in it, select this face, X, faces to delete it. Now we've gone down in our numbers, all right, and if I look at it from the front or slightly from the side, you don't even notice it's gone, but it makes sense to get rid of it. We're going to do that on the sides as well. Go into edit mode, select the face, and because we have the mirror on, it'll select the other one, X faces. Do we not have them? We applied the mirror, that's why. Okay, go back in, X faces, we'll get rid of that. Let's come into this one, get rid of this back face, X faces. Back in object mode, select this into edit mode, select this one, X faces. And down here, select this back face. Don't select anything else, X faces. It's debatable if you want to keep the bottom face on these pieces, but because of the way the bevel works, I often will like to do that. But you can really try to minimize how many faces you have. So we got rid of those. If this window was embedded in the wall, like, I'll just quickly do something. You don't have to follow me on this, but rotate Y 90. I'll just scale it up. If this was the wall and the window was in like that, then you could get rid of these faces as well. But we're not going to do that here. Now, one thing we should make sure of is that all of our polys are facing the right way. Sometimes when you create things, your polys may be facing the wrong way. And let's come up here to overlays and click on face orientation. And you'll notice some of this is blue and some of it is red. Blue is good, red is not good. It means that if you actually rendered this, this would be invisible. The polys are actually facing the other way. So what you do is just periodically come up here, click on face orientation. There is a way to tell. If you come over here and you click on matte caps, And if you choose a matte cap, and often you'll have a different bunch of matte caps than I will based on the version of Blender and whether I bought some. If I do this, sometimes you can tell, I don't know if you're new to Blender, you may not see this, but these are kind of lighter in color, and these are kind of a sickly dark color, at least to my mind. Or you can do this. And what you do is you select these. I'm going to hold Shift and click, Shift and click. I've got them all selected. Go into edit mode, and A, you can select multiple separate pieces, and I want to make these blue. So I'm going to go Alt N for the normals, recalculate outside. I want them to face outwards. That'll turn them all to blue. Deselect, go back into object mode, turn off the face orientation, and if you look at this now, I don't know if you can tell the difference, but everything is the nice sort of light, almost metallic looking. They don't have that sickly dark color. So that's something I'm just going to come back here. You should keep in mind. So all my polys are facing the right way. We've deleted some back faces. We're getting used to some of the main tools. Now I want to bring in one more plane so I can make the glass on this. And I'd like it to be right in the middle. I'm not certain that this is in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select this, and I'm going to bring my 3D cursor to this position. So what I need to do is go into edit mode, select it, Shift S, cursor to select it. It brings my 3D cursor there. What that means is if I bring a new object in, like let's say I bring in a cube, it'll bring it in right at that spot. If I bring in a cylinder, mesh, cylinder, it'll go right at that spot. If I bring my 3D cursor somewhere else, for example, it was right there. If I bring a cube in now, it brings it in a little bit lower down. So you can decide, and we'll use this soon, to determine where you want to bring in your next object. And I want to try bringing it in around there. So in edit mode, I'm just going to select the entire object, or you can just select that face, Shift S, cursor to select it. I'm going to bring in another plane now. There it is. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees in the X, RX 90. And I'm going to move it backwards in the Y a little bit, like it's a piece of glass. Move it in behind these a little bit anyhow. And I do want it interacting with the sides. We'll deal with that in a second. I'm going to go into edit mode, and I want to make it taller. So I'm going to press 2 for edge selection now. Select this top edge. And I'm just going to pull it up under the piece of wood. Now select the bottom edge, pull it down underneath the piece of wood. And now I have that. I can go back into object mode, whoops. And I think I'm okay. Maybe this could go a little further up, so it's like touching the wood. Another thing we can do is we can turn on the shadow. Let's check that out. We had cavity on, shadow. That looks kind of cool. Maybe with that on, I might want to bring it up a bit. So there is our window. Now, often what I would like to do, once I'm getting, parts of the model done, I often will move it up so it's like sort of almost sitting on the x-axis. That's like the ground level. And then, you don't have these axes running through your model. If you want to have a look at it without all this stuff, you can always turn this off by clicking here and here. And now it's sort of like just floating in space, and you can have a better view of it. All right. Don't forget to save your file once in a while. So it's looking really good. There's our model. We have pieces of wood that look reasonable, and a pane of glass back there that hopefully looks reasonable. You just make sure that it's not too far away from, you put it wherever you want, wherever you think looks good. All right, so I want to make some kind of a fancy handle, and I'm just going to follow along to do this. I think I want it to be right in the middle of this, so I'm going to go into this object in edit mode, 3 for face selection, and click the front face. I'm going to bring my 3D cursor right in the middle of this. That's why I click this face. Shift S, cursor to select it. See the way the red and white circle jump to the middle. My next object will come bang smack right in the middle of that. So to do this, just follow along. I'm going to create a circle, Shift A, mesh, circle, And if I don't do anything yet, and I just click on this add circle menu, it'll pop up. And here I can change the number of vertices. The higher the vertices, the smoother it's going to look, but it also, again, adds a lot of vertices and polys to your model. And so I'm going to switch this to something like, let's try 18, a lower amount. Just click and it's done. I'm going to go into edit mode and 1 for vertex selection. You can see all the dots. There should be 18 vertices. I may actually move it out, and we don't feel like counting these, but trust me, there's 18. I'm going to scale it down by pressing S. I'm scaling it down. I'm going to look from the front, and you probably can't tell what I'm going to do yet, but you will soon. So I'm going to rotate this around the Y-axis, which goes away from us, Y90. Scale it down some more, and I'm going to pull it off to the side of this center. That's going to give me the ability to mirror this. I don't have to be in object mode. I can be in edit mode. I'm going to come to my modifiers and choose mirror. And I have another one right there. I'm going to actually pull this a little bit closer. All right, so what do I want to do here? Well, just follow along. I just deselected. I'm going to press 3 to look from the side. And I want to delete some of these vertices. I'm going to press B for box select and then drag my mouse. I can drag a square. And I'm going to grab all of these vertices, X, delete vertices. And then B, I'm going to delete the bottom ones, X, vertices. So I now have just this piece here, this angle sort of piece. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude towards this one, and because it's mirrored, this one will extrude towards this one. And I want them to meet in the middle, and I'm going to turn on the mirror modifier clipping. And that will mean that when I extrude and they touch, they will kind of glue together. They'll stick together. You'll see what I mean. I'm going to extrude. I'm going to press E, left click, and pull with the red arrow, and they're going to hit. I'm going to let go. Now I can't separate them. And that's basically what I wanted to do. Now that may be a little bit long for what I want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these vertices here and pull them in. I'm going to press Shift and Alt and just click on the line that joins these vertices, and that selects them all. I could go one at a time holding Shift. That's fine. I'm going to pull it in a little bit. You'll notice the other side moves in as well. All right, so far so good. I'm going to take this and in edit mode, I'm just going to pull it in until it pretty much makes contact with that, just to get a sense of this. Actually, I'm going to bring it out a little bit. I need to create the end of this, and the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to select that vertex, and I'm going to press E to extrude and pull down. And as I'm doing that, I'm creating this line, and I want this line to go down exactly to this side, and then you'll see what I'll do. To do that, we can use the snapping function. I'm going to switch this, click here, and choose vertex. As I pull this down, I'm going to press Control and then pull my mouse over to this point, and it'll snap to that point. If I press Control and I hover over that point, you see, I can snap to that point. They're at the same level. Now, I don't have to do anything else with that. Shift select that point. I have both of them selected. F makes a face. This is actually a face. Now, with that done, it's done it on the other side as well. I can fill this hole up. I can press Shift and Alt and click, and that should select everything. If it doesn't get that last point, just grab it and press F. I can actually make a solid face like that. Starting to see what we're going to do. All right, and if you're not perfectly following, going, how would you know to do that? Don't worry about it. It's just because I made that thing a number of times, and that's you just get better and better at it. 3 for face selection. I'll just select it. Okay, I want to bevel this, but I don't want to use the bevel modifier. I'm going to bevel this by hand. To bevel it manually or by hand, you're going to press Control B and then pull with your mouse. So watch what happens. Control and B, and you get that line, pull, and you get two lines separating out. If I roll my mouse up, watch what happens. I get more and more segments and it gets smoother. Now you don't want a billion in there because you don't need that. You roll your mouse back. I've got 2. I'm going to go 3, 4. I may go for 5. And you can move your mouse left and right to change the size of that. See, that kind of rounds it out. Go back into object mode. And we're getting there. We're not quite done yet. All right, now I want to give this some thickness. I think I will go ahead and apply, will I do apply? No, I won't apply the mirror yet. Okay, one way to do this is use the solidify modifier. Press solidify, click on equal thickness to make it nice and equal and balanced, and then hold down shift and play with the thickness here. All right. You can go in or you can go out, but be careful about this. You see the way they fold it over on top of each other? You don't want the vertices to overlap. So in this case, I think I'm going to come out. And think of this as a piece of brass or some kind of piece of metal. How thick do you want to have this? Maybe I'll just do that. Okay. Now I'm going to apply this modifier, solidify. I'm just going to click apply. Because I want to do something else to this. I want to delete some faces we're not going to use. And so I want to isolate this. It's hard to see. I'm going to, with it selected, I'm going to press the / button. It's got the question mark and the /. And now I can look just at this. I'm going to go into edit mode, and I want to get rid of all of these faces at the back. I don't need them. So I'm going to press 3 for face selection, select this one, hold shift, select this one, this one, this one, or I can select this one, hold the control key down and click this one, and it'll get the entire line of them. I don't think I'm going to get rid of the bottom because we might see that. So X, faces. Now it might look weird, but let's go back into object mode and / key to bring everything else back. Take this, slide it in here until it makes contact, and we've got that. Now we can try to shade this smooth, but I think it may not look good until we do something else. But let's try it. Right click, shade smooth. It's not bad. We get to this black stuff here. All right, so let's see what we can do for that. This edge here is very sharp, right? It goes from this poly to this one and this one. It's 90 degrees. We want to bevel this edge and this edge. And you'll generally be doing that on all the sharp edges. 2 for edge selection. Press Shift and Alt and click that edge. Now we have the mirror on, so it's going to do the other side for us. We're going to do both of them at the same time. Shift Alt and click this edge. Those edges are both selected all the way through, and now we want to get a vantage point where we can see it well. Press Control B to bevel, hold Shift and pull. We do not need this many segments. Roll back to, you have 2. It's the lowest as you can go. Roll 1 more, 3, click. That's fixed up the shading, and we now have a nice object there. Pretty nice anyhow. Now, it looks a little discolored, and I also want to scale this in the Z. I just want it slightly bigger. And I'm going to go ahead and apply the mirror. I wonder if it's flipped. Well, let's try this. Face orientation. No, it's not. It's okay. All right. So there is our window. Let's see if there's something I can do to fix up some of that shading. Let's come around the back here. And because of the way I did the mirror, there are extra faces on the inside that do not do any good for us. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get in there to delete them. And one thing you can do is you can temporarily take these and hide them by pressing H. Now they're hidden, and I can now select this, 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 and this X faces, get rid of those, Alt-H, bring the other ones back, and we are good. So we had some internal faces that were not doing anything for us. Okay, see, because it's clear, there's nothing inside there till you got to the middle. Yeah. Anyhow, there is our window. All right, so hopefully that looks okay to you. We could take the whole thing, deselect that. Let's see, maybe we just hide that. Take the whole thing. I just want to try a scaling in the Z. Make a slightly different shape. Alt-H to bring that back. Take that, pull it up. We have a slightly different shape of a window. And if this piece is now too thick, you can go in and scale it in the X a little bit to narrow it. And you're all set. Okay, so that is some of the tools. There are quite a bit more things that we can do and a lot of tricks. So I encourage you to watch some of my videos, like a flashlight or a lantern video, and see what you can pick up. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Come over to the Zero Bio Discord. And if you want more of these sort of beginnerish tutorials, please let me know, because I tend to go off and do the Halloween challenge and the sci-fi stuff, and it's all good. But if you want more of these kind of step-by-step things where I explain the modifiers and the tools and we do some basic stuff, just let me know. Don't be embarrassed or self-conscious or anything about that, because you've got to start Blender somewhere and get a good basis, and then, you know, hopefully you can follow some of my other tutorials or some of my, you know, there's a lot of people doing that. So just let me know what you need. All right. Take care. Thanks for watching. Good luck, and we'll see you again soon.